Our speaker today, Pravrajika Shuddhatmaprana, needs very little introduction to many of us here who know her, love her, and respect her. She is a very good friend of this society. Mataji is an ordained nun of the Vedanta Society of Southern California and is currently resident at the Vivekananda Retreat. For many years, she's been active in the publication work of the Ramakrishna Order, editing numerous books and articles. She has also written many articles and is the author of 2 books, The Divine World of the Alvars and Indian Saints and Mystics, and most recently, a book on the life of Ramanuja. The subject of her talk today is Swami Brahmananda on spiritual practices.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. For those of you who are not familiar with Swami Brahmananda, he was the foremost brother disciple of Swami Vivekananda and a much beloved disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. He was considered to be Sri Ramakrishna's Manas Putra, the mind-born son. So Ramakrishna loved him very much, and in his later life, he was literally like father, like son. He was very much like Ramakrishna. And he gave wonderful, wonderful instructions on spiritual practices. And so I'm going to just give a little... my talk is going to be on some instructions that he gave to Swami Vivekananda. Now, I'm sure most of you are aware of how popular meditation and yoga have become in the West lately. But many corporations have meditation rooms now. But are people practicing these for spiritual benefits or purposes? That's the question. Or are they practicing them for gaining mental alertness or a healthy body? I think most people's interest in them nowadays is for the benefits they get for working in this world. On one hand, this is good because anything that brings calmness and mental alertness to our life is going to make life meaningful for us. But on the other hand, there's something to be said about that spiritual techniques which have been passed down from guru to disciple for thousands of years are now often being used to help people make more money. So then there are many people who, with great enthusiasm, take instructions from a guru. But after a short time, they hardly do any spiritual practices at all. Whatever enthusiasm they had for it at the beginning soon dries up. Perhaps many of these people were just looking for quick results or quick benefits for their life in this world. And if these results don't come easily, well, then it's just not worth the effort. Again, for some people, God realization may seem like a very distant or even unattainable goal. So they might feel discouraged about practicing spiritual disciplines. But is God really unattainable? Why would Ramakrishna tell us that realizing God is the goal of human life? As he said, to realize God is the one goal of life. Or one can certainly see God through the practice of spiritual disciplines. Or the vision of God is the only goal of human life. But it is true that spiritual practices have to be done with earnestness and in the right way, following the instructions of a guru. Sri Krishna Prem was a wonderful British man who became quite well-known, very holy man in India. Some of his writings are just really wonderful. I often read them. There's a lot of really good advice in them. Anyway, at one point he wrote, "There is no such thing as unearned income in the spiritual world. Individual effort always bears fruit if it is intelligently and rightly directed. But you may spend 100 years in trying to jump up at one bound onto the roof of a house, and nothing whatever will come of such misdirected effort." So perhaps if we take another look at our spiritual disciplines from the standpoint of the goal, we might get a better understanding of them and of how they can be intelligently and rightly directed. And we might also get some renewed enthusiasm for practicing them. Once, when Swami Vivekananda was a young monk, Swami Brahmananda gave him these wonderful instructions. He told him, "By a very long habit of many lives, your mind has become so attached to the body, to the objective world, and to alien opinions that it has forgotten that it can remain aloof, free from the gross body, and that it may reason independently without the necessity or pressure of the opinion of others. Commonly, the mind behaves through the impulse of the desires, and the majority of them are on sensual pleasures limited by time and space. The common mind cannot think of something outside the kingdom of name and form. It cannot conceive of something eternal. It wakes up in the body and remains attached to the body throughout the day. That is why by only saying that God exists or that He is all-merciful, we will not change our attachments at all. Therefore, it is absolutely necessary that you change your mentality, submitting it to a severe daily discipline at the same time every day. In a short time, in a year, or maybe within 6 months, you will see how the mind will slowly learn the new lesson and will work directed towards God and helped by the remembrance of the ideal. During the day in all actions, the mind will gradually accept the new change. Now it sees and believes that outside the transitory world of the senses, nothing else exists. But through the force of constant practice, it will feel that its only duty is to direct itself towards God. Practice something. Practice with determination. Practice with the spirit of the true researcher, and you will see that everything I have said is true. The needle of your mind, like that of a compass, should always be directed towards God. Reason like a jnani, act like a karma yogan, and feel like a bhakta. Reason, discover without preconceived ideas, and you will see that the world is losing its identity. When you do anything, think more of others. You have to work always in a spirit of selflessness, without attachment, without seeking your own satisfaction, and you will see that your mind will enjoy a happiness never before felt, and it will remain peaceful for the greater part of the day. Try to feel now like a true devotee of God, that the Antaryaman, that is the internal knower, is in you. The mind has to feel it through all its movements. Now, there's more in this, but I won't go into everything that he said. This is the main thing. As we can see here, Swami Brahmananda, like Ramakrishna, has a very positive approach to spiritual life. The mind can be trained, God can be seen, but we need some discipline in our lives to attain this goal. According to what Maharaj says here, there are 3 basic things that happen when we practice spiritual disciplines with earnestness and sincerity, and they all have to do with training the mind. First, the mind is trained to become free from the idea that we are the body and to develop control over the sense organs. Second, the mind is trained to be in control of the mental waves and to think clearly. And third, the mind is trained to develop love for the goal and determination and enthusiasm to reach it. And who is it that trains the mind? It is our own higher self, our very own self. And as the mind gets more and more trained, we gradually come to realize this. So first, Maharaj is stressing here that at present, in all our thoughts and actions, we think we are a body. Most people think this is natural. But for spiritual seekers, this is a serious problem. Again, we might protest and say, well, intellectually, I know better. But what do we invariably find? When the body is ill, we think we are ill. When the body is in pain, we think we are in pain. The body is like a weighed anchor that prevents our ship from crossing the sea. So in order to make any progress in spiritual life, we have to first become free from attachment to the body and from the downward pull that it exerts on the mind. And at least at the time of meditation, we should become free from body consciousness. This is why Maharaj first says we must remove our attachment to the body. After all, we all know this is not our permanent abode. This is why teachers of many traditions, Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, and others, often recommend that we think about the impermanence of the body. By reflecting again and again on the drawbacks of the body, such as old age, disease, and death, we not only acquire dispassion towards the body, but we also continually remember why we are practicing spiritual disciplines. The idea of these teachers is that by reflecting on the impermanence of the body, we will acquire a certain sense of disgust for it. Some monastic organizations even keep skulls and skeletons around in the dining rooms and other rooms to remind the present monastics of what will eventually happen to their own bodies. This was monk so-and-so. This was a nun so-and-so, you know. You will be there. But Maharaj has a different approach, a positive one. And that is, we should attain mastery of the body by attaining mastery over the mind. In these instructions, Maharaj again and again refers back to the mind and how it works. At present, the mind is a slave to the body, to our emotions, and to our sense organs. What we want is to make the body, mind, and sense organs our slaves. As Maharaj says, life after life, we have continually reinforced the idea that we are the body. And not only do we identify ourselves with the body, but we also identify ourselves with the sense organs, the eyes, the ears, the nose, etc. All of these senses have bound us tightly to the world and to alien ways of thinking. Alien ways of thinking in the sense that we don't realize that these senses are not really us. Maharaj says, commonly the mind behaves through the impulse of the desires, and the majority of them are essential pleasures limited by time and space. The common mind cannot think of something outside the kingdom of name and form. It cannot conceive of something eternal. It wakes up in the body and remains attached to the body throughout the day. Obviously, then, as Maharaj says, we need more than just an intellectual affirmation that we are not the body. We need to come to a point where we feel ourselves to be separate from the body, mind, and organs, and even more important, to feel that we are in control of them. Now, this takes practice and determination, and this is where spiritual disciplines come in. Therefore, Maharaj says it is absolutely necessary that you change your mentality, submitting it to a severe daily discipline at the same time every day. In a short time, in a year, or maybe within 6 months, you will see how the mind will slowly learn the new lesson and will work directed towards God and helped by the remembrance of the ideal. So it is the mind that must change, as Maharaj says, and this takes practice every day. But why should we do it at the same time every day? Because when the mind gets used to a routine like this, the practice becomes easier. The idea is that gradually the mind automatically begins to feel a pull at the same time every day to practice spiritual disciplines. Moreover, as the mind gets used to this new way of thinking, it very soon begins to like it. It begins to get a taste for a spiritual mentality. Then, throughout the day, it will turn more and more to these new thoughts, and it will gradually become attached to thinking of God. As we begin this practice, however, we should also remember that our spiritual practices are not limited to the specific times that we do them when we do japa and meditation. If we want to train our body, mind, and organs, we need to maintain control of them throughout the day. By putting some restraints on what we see, hear, taste, etc., we can prove to the sense organs that we are in control and not them. As Maharaj says, all the windows through which the mind goes out to experience sensual perceptions should be hermetically closed. For example, suppose we are looking at suppose we are sitting at the dining table eating our breakfast. Now, we've got maybe a newspaper or magazine or the cereal box in front of us, or our phone. Instead of looking at one of these, reading the cereal box again and again, the same thing every day, we can tell our eyes, don't look, don't even glance there. Just repeat your mantra, put your mind there. Just don't even look at it. Ignore it. Keeping up a discipline like this for a long time with each of the sense organs, each of them, is immensely helpful. Now, people who cook for puja know that they cannot taste the food while it is cooking, as it will be offered in the shrine. So, of course, you can't taste the food. But that's not hard. But they also know that they shouldn't smell it. For that, too, is enjoying the food before it is offered. Now, it seems like this would be impossible, but as the cooks get used to this, they soon find it's not a problem at all. The mind just doesn't go there. That's it. So this is why Swami Brahmananda says during the day in all actions, the mind will gradually accept the new change. Now it sees and believes that outside the transitory world of the senses, nothing else exists. But through the force of constant practice, it will feel that its only duty is to direct itself towards God. As Maharaj indicates, the purpose of these disciplines is to train our mind to understand that the higher self is in control, not the body-mind complex with all its desires. And again, it is to remind ourselves that we are this higher self, a self that is pure and blissful in itself and that does not need petty mundane pleasures to be happy. For as long as we are attached to these petty mundane pleasures, we cannot conceive of something eternal, as Maharaj says. Second, Maharaj is stressing that we must train the mind to be in control of all mental waves and to think clearly. What does he mean when he says that the mind can reason independently without the necessity or the pressure of the opinion of others? First of all, think of it. At present, much of our behavior and thinking is simply a reaction to others' words and actions, what other people say or do. Even if we do not react physically or verbally to others, we often react mentally. And it is amazing how much mental energy can be expended this way. We seem to be bound by what other people say, whether it is good or bad, whether it is about us or about politics or someone or something else. For instance, if someone is angry with us or rude to us, their words might reverberate in our mind the whole day. Just our reaction alone to their words gives power to them. So we must be able to detach ourselves from our mental waves and bring our emotions and mental impulses under control. Otherwise, we are simply a slave to others' thoughts and emotions, and to our emotions. We should also remember that just as diseases can be contagious, so also our attitudes and behavior. No doubt we have all seen how love and happiness are contagious. Yet we little realize how anger, hatred, and other afflictive emotions are also contagious. History has shown us this again and again, yet still we forget. So we must be able to detach ourselves from our emotions and hold on to the higher self to keep ourselves above these things. A person who is trained in discrimination and concentration and meditation, that is trained to be in control of the mental waves and think of God or our own divine nature, such a person can penetrate through the layers of distracting speech and behavior, all vying for our attention. Here we can also remember Maharaj's words, helped by the remembrance of the ideal. Constant remembrance of God or of our own true divine nature, or the practice of the presence of God, or the constant repetition of a mantra. Really and truly, these are the best antidotes for distracting and destructive speech and behavior. Moreover, we must be able to examine our own mind to uncover the tricks that our ego plays on us. The nature of the ego is such that it's always trying to gain an advantage. Yet the purpose of spiritual disciplines is to know we are not the ego, to eliminate the ego, to know that it is unreal, that it is simply a part of the framework of the illusion. But of course, the ego doesn't like this. One way the ego tries to build itself up is by seeking or imagining faults in others. But we should note that Swamiji used to say that what we see outside is actually what is inside us. And this very same principle is behind Holy Mother's advice. If you want peace, then do not look into anybody's faults, look into your own faults. Learn to make the whole world your own. A peaceful mind is a pure mind. So by refraining from finding faults in others, our mind can be at peace, and a peaceful mind can meditate more easily. After all, our true nature is Ananda, bliss, and it is Advaita, non-dual. Well, we can translate this on a lower mental plane as joy and love. If we keep this in mind, then instead of being a source of strife for other people, we can become a source of peace and blessing. Then we can help to make happiness, peace, and love contagious. Again, another point here is that at present, our ideas about God and spiritual life are based simply on what we have read or what we have heard. If we have heard these ideas from our guru, that is fine. But we need to use some discrimination in other things we read or hear, as not everything is meant for us. Then again, though it is extremely important to have faith in the scriptures and in other holy instructions, Yet we must also be able to meditate clearly in order to assimilate the instructions and experience these truths for ourselves. Only then will our faith turn to conviction. The study of the scriptures and of the lives and teachings of holy people is a very important part of our spiritual practices. Yet we must keep reminding ourselves these spiritual states are for us to experience and not just read about it. I know one person said, "Oh, well, I've read all about it." That's not the way you get there. It helps, yes, to a point. Now, the third point Maharaj is stressing is that we must train the mind to develop love for the goal and determination and enthusiasm to reach it. Practice something, he says. Practice with determination. Practice with the spirit of the true researcher, and you will see that everything that I have said is true. The needle of your mind, like that of a compass, should always be directed towards God. Swami Satprakashananda used to say, what do we really meditate on? We meditate on what we love. And Sri Krishna Prem wrote, anyone can talk about meditation, but he cannot master it if he does not know what the word means. If people sit and meditate 1 or 2 hours looking at their own egos and call it meditation, how can anything come of it? So if we love our ego, we will meditate on our ego. If we love our iPhone, we will meditate on our iPhone. If we love our dog, we will meditate on our dog. The needle of our mind will always be drawn towards that which we love. And if we do not love God as much as we love our ego, our iPhone, or our dog, then it will be difficult for us to direct the needle of our mind to God. Yet, there's also something I call the Kamsa effect. I don't know if you've read in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Sri Krishna. His great enemy was King Kamsa. King Kamsa heard that Krishna was going to kill him. So he was going to be the one who killed him. So he was constantly meditating on Krishna and how to find him, destroy him. His mind was totally focused on him. So also, our minds also meditate on what we fear or despise or are jealous of. When we recognize these things, then we see what a strong pull our emotions have on us. Actually, the Kamsa meditation is not really different from meditating on what we lie or on what we love, because attraction and aversion, that is raga and dvesha, love and hate, these are two sides of the same coin. They are both connected to the I, the ego. I love this, I despise this. It's all about that all-important illusory I. Thus, we must watch where our mind goes and reflect on why it goes there. Only then can we get our mind intelligently and rightly directed, that is, directed towards the Lord. So this is why Maharaj says the needle of your mind, like that of a compass, should always be directed towards God. We must turn it away from this I. But that takes practice. After all, just as we wake up in the body and remain attached to the body throughout the day, we also wake up in our ego and remain attached to the ego throughout the day. So day after day, we need to make time in our lives to put God first and to remind ourselves that He is our true goal, our most beloved. And we should not merely remind ourselves of this at certain fixed times, but also try to feel it constantly. By putting this impression firmly on our mind like this, we will gradually come to have absolute conviction that the Lord is our all in all, the life of our life. And we will begin to love this practice so much that we won't want to miss it for even a day. Now, there are many ways to put you think this is, you may think this is difficult at first, but once you get into these practices, then you won't think it's difficult at all. You'll love to do it. So there are many ways to put the Lord first in our life, including, as we said earlier, practice of the presence of God, constant remembrance of God or our own self, and constant repetition of the mantra. Now, just as the Hindu tradition has a practice of continually repeating a mantra, so also the Eastern Orthodox Christian tradition uses a technique of constantly repeating a prayer in the heart. Father Maximus of the Greek Orthodox Christian tradition had this to say about the constant repetition of the Jesus prayer. Now, there are several variations of this Jesus prayer, but the basic prayer goes, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. So Father Maximus said, this continuous repetition of the Jesus prayer gradually energizes our hearts and minds and replaces all other thoughts. By energizing the mind through the repetition of the prayer, grace gradually comes and propels the person from the first stage of prayer to what the Holy Fathers call the prayer of the heart. The prayer, that is, becomes self-activating and an effortless and natural activity of our minds and souls, just like breathing. Constant prayer now becomes natural to the soul, feeding it with very sweet honey. The prayer never stops, whether the person is asleep or awake. Feeding it with very sweet honey. Yeah, our whole body, mind, and soul enjoys the sweetness of it because this is a direct connection with the Lord. Now, as I said before, the Hindu tradition also uses the same technique taught by a guru with mantras. When the mantra begins to repeat itself continually on its own, it is called a japa. Many of us have received a mantra from a guru, or maybe we repeat Om or a name of God as a mantra. We have been told that the mantra has power. In fact, saints testify again and again that the name of God is powerful enough to take us to the God. Now, if our ordinary words have power, just imagine how much more power this mantra has. Yet often we find that people do not have much faith in it. This is because the mantra is such a subtle thing, and so is its power. It is very difficult to comprehend how such a subtle thing works. Ramakrishna often spoke about the power of the mantra, power of the name of God. As he said, there is great power in the seed of God's name. It destroys ignorance. A seed is tender and the sprout soft. Still, it pierces the hard ground. The ground breaks and makes way for the sprout. Swami Satprakashananda also used to describe how at the time of initiation, when one receives a mantra from a guru, it is as if the guru has planted a seed in one's heart. So it is up to us then to water and nourish that seed by repeating it, and not just repeating it mechanically, but repeating it with faith and devotion. If this is done, then the seed will eventually sprout and grow into a beautiful plant with flowers and fruits. The flowers are our spiritual experiences. The fruit is our liberation. But patience is necessary. Just as one cannot expect a seed to sprout and grow in one day, so also we cannot expect quick results from our japa. Ramakrishna also advised us to repeat the name continually. As he said, Bhakti, that is devotion, is the only essential thing. One obtains love of God by constantly chanting his name and his glories. I like to think of meditation and japa as being like tuning into a radio station. I mean the old-fashioned type of radio stations that where you have to turn a dial, not the new kind. Many of you know how easy it is to get distracted when you do japa and meditation. It is like not tuning into a radio station properly. Perhaps if you don't quite get the right frequency, you hear two stations, both scratchy, playing at the same time. This is distracted japa. Or perhaps you get another station altogether if your mind is totally distracted. Well, we want God's radio station. We want the waves of our mind to tune into His frequency. If we can do our japa and meditation with an undistracted mind, we can tune into God's frequency perfectly and reach Him. Once Ramakrishna said, God and His name are identical. There is no difference between Rama and His holy name. Thus, we really can reach God through the practice of japa. Now, another beautiful example of making the Lord first and foremost in our life comes from the writings of Søren Kierkegaard. I'm using a couple of Christian examples because it gives another turn, another look at sometimes if we hear Hindu things all the time, it kind of rotates again. So if we hear something a little bit new, then that gives a little new direction. So in one of Kierkegaard's works, he gives a deeply moving observation about Jesus' teaching, seek first God's kingdom and His righteousness. So how do we know when we are putting God first in our life? According to Kierkegaard, it is when, in our prayer and meditation, we become silent before God. Kierkegaard says, you shall, in the deepest sense, make yourself nothing, become nothing before God, learn to keep silent. In this silence is the beginning, which is first to seek God's kingdom. And what happens when a person comes to God in his prayer and becomes silent? Kierkegaard says, he had thought that to pray was to talk. Then he learned that to pray is not only to keep silent, but to listen. And that is how it is. To pray is not to listen to oneself speak, but is to come to keep silent and to continue keeping silent, to wait until the person who prays hears God. Now, I believe that by listening, what Kierkegaard meant is that this is not just a passive silence. For if it is a passive silence, that opens up the mind to a dull or a sleep state, a dull state or a sleep state, or maybe a distracted state too. But an active silence, that is active meaning with the idea of listening, that keeps the mind focused on God. According to Kierkegaard, our silence before God is our total surrender to Him, as silence is the sign of absence of all desires for our own will. Now, at other times, of course, we could pray for devotion and knowledge, as Ramakrishna says. Yet there's an incomparable beauty in Kierkegaard's discipline, the discipline of silence. Spending some time every day in this meditation is a powerful reminder of how God is first and foremost in our life, a reminder that will stick with us throughout the day. For if we truly feel that we have come before the Lord, come in His presence, in our prayer or meditation, how can we even think of anything else but Him? Moreover, it does not matter whether we think of God with form or without form in this discipline. This discipline will work either way. The same result is attained either way. Actually, this discipline is quite close to the technique taught by Patanjali in his second sutra, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the suppression of the modifications of the mind. That is, it is not allowing the thought waves to rise. Only here in Kierkegaard's meditation, there is one thought wave, and that thought is of the Lord. It's perhaps an easier form of Patanjali's instruction. Then, after the instruction to continuously have the needle of the mind turned towards God, Maharaj gives the following instructions. Reason like a jnani, act like a karma yogan, and feel like a bhakta. All three of these disciplines, jnana yoga, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, these are all important for our spiritual life, as each one of them adds a necessary aspect, a necessary flavor of spiritual life all its own. These various yogas not only make our spiritual life, our spiritual disciplines more interesting, but also more firm and meaningful. In fact, Swami Vivekananda felt that neglecting any of these aspects might even take us off track. You get too one-sided on one thing, on only doing karma yoga or jnana yoga like that. You need all three, a balance. So reason like a jnani, says Maharaj. That is, he says, reason, discover without preconceived ideas, and you will see that the world is losing its identity. So we can take up any number of Vedantic meditations to follow this type of reasoning. The Panchadasi is a good book to read like that. And as many of you know, Ramana Maharshi was an expert in this kind of reasoning. Once he gave the following instructions to a new visitor at his ashram. He said, a dreamer dreams a dream. He sees the dream world with pleasures and pains, etc., but he wakes up and then loses all interest in the dream world. So it is with the waking world also. Just as the dream world, being only a part of yourself and not different from you, ceases to interest you, so also the present world would cease to interest you if you awake from this waking dream and realize that it is a part of yourself and not an objective reality. Because you think that you are apart from the objects around you, you desire something. But if you understand that this thing was only a thought form, you would no longer desire it. The self is always realized. There is no seeking to realize what is always already realized. For you cannot deny your own existence. That existence is consciousness, the self. Unless you exist, you cannot ask questions. So you must admit your own existence. That existence is the self. It is already realized. Therefore, the effort to realize this results only in your realizing your present mistake, that you have not realized yourself. There's no fresh realization. The self becomes revealed. Well, reasoning like this is one way to make the world lose its identity for us, as Maharaj says. Then Swami Brahmananda turns to karma yoga. Act like a karma yogan. When you do anything, think more of others. You have to work always in a spirit of selflessness, without attachment, without seeking your own satisfaction, and you will see that your mind will enjoy a happiness never before felt, and it will remain peaceful for the greater part of the day. How often do we work grudgingly as a duty? Yet Maharaj says that our mind will gain happiness and peace from selfless work and from thinking of others first. We know this. We have seen from our own experience. We love to make others happy. We love to help others. But still the mind resists and thus sinks into a tamasic, a lazy state. And so neither do we get peace ourselves, nor are we of any use to anyone else. In the book, Most of All They Taught Me Happiness, Robert Mueller, a former official of the United Nations, told the story of a French priest, Abbé Pierre, who was once asked to visit a poor, helpless man who had tried to commit suicide. Now, this was right after World War II, and the condition of France was very bad then. Abbé Pierre was himself in total despair, seeing the poverty and misery and wretchedness all around him. He saw absolutely no hope for the poor people of his parish. When he came to the bedside of this man who had tried to commit suicide, he honestly told the man, "My poor fellow, how am I expected to help you when I am in such desperate need of help myself?" Now, this poor man was shocked and replied, "Father, do you mean to say that there might be on this earth someone more miserable than I? Someone who might need my help?" Abbé Pierre later said, "His words were like a revelation to me. They aroused me from my lethargy." His message was that a person's greatest need was to be needed by others, to be of service to others. I hastened to confide in him my personal miseries. In return, he confessed to me that he had wanted to die because there was no one left on earth who cared for him. So from this conversation between these two despairing souls, the two men set up the organization Disciples of Emmaus. Hope and joy came back to my life, Abbé Pierre said, when we both founded the Disciples of Emmaus, an association of outcasts, desperados, and former criminals. First in Paris and later in other cities of France and Europe, people like us gathered and collected garbage, rummage, and refuse, sold whatever was saleable, and from the proceeds helped the poor. This cause gave us a new purpose in life, and with it came health, happiness, and faith. We should note here that if one can get so much benefit from working selflessly for the poor and destitute, as these men did, then how much more benefit can one get from working with the idea that we are serving the Lord in these people, as Swami Vivekananda asks us to do. But even if we are just doing ordinary work at home or in the office, we can get peace just from knowing that even this small work is of benefit to others and is serving the Lord in some way. Then Maharaj says, feel like a bhakta. Try to feel now like a true devotee of God, that the antaryaman, that is the internal knower, is within you. The mind has to feel it through all its movements. Now, generally, we think a bhakta, or a lover of God, wants to feel a relationship with God, such as a relationship of a servant or a friend or parent. So we do not think so much of a bhakta as desiring to feel that the Lord is within us. After all, as the saying goes, I want to eat sugar, not be sugar, Ramakrishna says. But here Maharaj says that the true devotee of God feels that the antaryaman, the internal self, is within. Well, the fact is, we first have to feel that we are inseparably united with the Lord, that the Lord is within us. Unless we first awaken that consciousness of the Lord within, how can we feel that we have any real relationship with Him? If we feel that we are forever and intrinsically separate from something, then we can never feel a relationship with it. We can never feel an intense desire to be united with it. We would know that it has nothing to do with us. But the very fact that the devotee knows without a doubt that he or she is eternally and intrinsically united with God, this creates a painful feeling of separation when the realization of that union is not experienced. So this is the feeling that one must arouse in oneself, that the Lord is within us, nearer than the nearest, dearer than the dearest. I like the way that is a well-known poet, A.K. Ramanujan, He did some wonderful translations of Namovar's poetry that illustrates this. And I like the way he puts it. A bhakta, a devotee, is not content to worship a god in word and ritual, nor is he content to grasp him in a theology. He needs to possess him and be possessed by the Lord. So this intensity of the possession. So when this kind of love for God dawns on us, we immediately attain peace and joy and bliss. This is the state of sattva, that is tranquility or serenity. As Maharaj says, only with the development of sattva comes the true understanding of the reality. Then an intimate feeling will come, the direct knowledge which does not need any further proof. Then you will know and enjoy true liberation, and the purpose of life will be fulfilled. Swami Brahmananda was a master teacher, and he understood very well the struggles of spiritual life. But he also knew that with sincerity and earnestness, the goal was absolutely attainable. Once Maharaj says, "You practice meditation and japa. You progress a little. Then comes a period of dryness. It seems that the doors are entirely closed. At that time, it is necessary that you stick to your spiritual practices with infinite patience. By doing so, you will find one day that all of a sudden the doors are opened. What a great joy it is then. In spiritual life, many such thresholds have to be crossed." But Maharaj also knew that we must really want the Lord. Once a close devotee asked Maharaj why he did not just give God realization to people when he had the power to do so, and he did have the power to do so. He could just give it with a touch. Maharaj said gravely, "Who wants God?" Again, regarding the vision of Sri Ramakrishna, Maharaj told a young monk, "Sri Ramakrishna exists always. Pray to him day and night for his vision. He will dispel all your doubts and will make you understand his true nature." The young monk then asked, "Do you see the Master nowadays?" "Yes," replied Maharaj. "I see him whenever he shows himself out of his mercy. Anyone who has his grace can see him. But how many people have that love and longing to see him?" So it all boils down to whether or not we really want God. If we really want to realize him, then enthusiasm to practice spiritual disciplines will automatically be awakened within us, and we shall attain the grace of the Lord. But if we don't care, then there will always be one excuse or another to keep us from attaining the goal of life. Then our life will be wasted. This is why Swami Brahmananda said, dedicate yourself completely to God, and your life will become glorified. Thank you.
So, Mother, in the practice of Japa, you were talking about practicing the mantra with devotion and faith. But you also said that you can say the mantra at other times. And I remember Holy Mother's statement too, that it doesn't, like, whether you jump into the water or whether the water splashes on you, you still get wet.
Right.
So does Brahmananda Swamiji also say that even if our mind is not completely focused with faith and devotion on God, the practice of the mantra is always valuable and purifies our mind?
Yes, that's what they're saying. The mantra, the name of God, has its own power. And so it's going to have the power to help us, whether we have distracted japa or we're doing other things but repeating it and thinking of other things. It has the power. But the more we focus our mind on God and on the mantra, the more it works. And that's the idea, is to eventually keep it so that when we repeat that mantra, it actually brings a connection. You know, that frequency of God and the frequency of the mantra come together. That's because as Ramakrishna says, the name of God, the name of Rama is Rama. So the frequency of God, of Rama, and the frequency of the name, we get those two together. That's the idea. If you're trying this way, it's not quite focused, okay, you're attempting. It's making the attempt, and that's always a help. That's what most of our spiritual practices. I mean, how many times do we really get focused? But the more we can get focused on it, the better. That's the idea. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, yeah. Oh, he's going back. Okay, first that person.
I'm just curious. Ramakrishna often related to God as mother, and we still persist in calling him rather than her in most of our discussions. And would it be helpful to try to break that habit?
It depends on the person, sure. I mean, you can think, you don't want to make a doctrine now, dogma, that God is only mother. So you can't, so saying him is her, either one, you're making a dogma either way. So whatever you feel comfortable with, do it. Okay.
Thank you, Swami. When we say during meditation we should focus on God and focus on the Lord, how are we defining God and Lord, and what is it exactly that I am focusing on beyond just that name, God and Lord?
Okay, well, it depends on how you want to think of God, because as Ramakrishna says, God will manifest to you in any way you want. Farmless, with farm, any farm. Like the very, very best example that of this whole thing is Ramakrishna's description of water and ice. Brahman is like this infinite ocean. The devotees, the desire of the devotees to see God in a certain form creates the ice, and the ice is formed in different ways. Now, this person will like the mother. This person will like, say, Shiva or Krishna. So you can focus on, it's up to you. Or if you have a guru, your guru sometimes tells you this is the best way to think of God for you, with farm, without farm, as you may prefer just Brahman without any qualities, without any farm aspect, anything. Or you may prefer a farmless God, but with qualities. That's like a Christian idea or a Muslim idea, that God has qualities but no farm. Or you may prefer God with qualities, with farm, like Mother Durga, Shiva, or Kali, Krishna, like that. So it's up to you, up to your guru, what aspect of God you will meditate on. Now, as far as the mantra goes, that goes along with the aspect of God you want to meditate on. If you don't want any form of God, you might prefer just Om. I shouldn't say just Om, but I mean only the one word Om. if you, I'm not demeaning it. If you want to meditate on Kali or Krishna or Ramakrishna or Holy Mother, like that, then you should get a mantra that is based on that aspect of God. So no one can tell you except your guru. That's between you and your guru. So your mantra goes along with the aspect of God that you want. And but we have to remember, as he said, God is always within us. God is always our divine nature. God is not only within us, we are that divine self. And if we like to think of a relationship, then we can think of ourselves as like a child of the mother or something like that. But if we prefer to just think of I am Brahman, then that is, yes, but you don't have to think of any other form, any qualities. Just that, what is that Brahman, who am I? Those two things, those two questions. So does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Vedanta is very non-dogmatic in this. It's whatever suits the individual. That's where you go.
Hey, good afternoon. I have a follow-up question to the same question that he had. So, as you said that it's up to me or the practitioner to decide what aspect of God, if he or she is worshipping a form, a Brahman in form. So, suppose for an example, I want to meditate on Kali. Is it up to me to just pick up whichever mantra I like and just repeat it, as long as I don't have a guru? So Google is my guru, I guess.
Yeah, Swami Brahmananda calls it Google Guru. You can do that. However, there's something, you may not realize it, but when you have a guru and you receive a mantra through initiation, like I said, there's some power that comes. It's the power of the Lord that gets transmitted from the guru to the disciple. And that puts a seed in the heart. Like I said, the guru, when he initiates a disciple, puts a seed of the Lord in the heart with the mantra. That has a power of its own. You can't explain it, but there is a power that comes through that initiation. So it's always better, and also the guru might look at your nature and think, I don't think he should be meditating on Kali. I think maybe Durga would be better, or something like that. But, try it. There's no reason why you can't try it. And repeat the mantra that you want to repeat, and any name of God has power. But somehow there's a power that comes through a guru with the initiation that can lift the disciple up. You may be struggling down here, but if you get that initiation, you may be pushed up a little, and then you can get more help that way. It's up to you. Yes.
Pranam Mataji, thank you for this wonderful lecture. So you, at the beginning of today's lecture, you talked a little bit about when we try to meditate, we tend to meditate on our ego. So my experience is when I try to meditate, sometimes I think of some future fear or anxiety or some past things that I did. Is that also a kind of meditating on the ego?
Yes.
How does it
definitely.
look like?
Because any emotion or thing like that is totally connected with the ego. I didn't say that we tend to meditate on the ego, but many people do. When they sit and meditate, that's what happens, because we meditate on what we love. And or like this, in this case, you meditate on what you fear. So that is totally connected. Any kind of fear or any kind of emotion like that, it's based on the ego. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Because who is it that fears? It's the ego that fears. The blissful self doesn't fear anything. So we want to get rid of this ego and go past it, and to know that this ego is just totally unreal. It's part of this total Maya. Is this does this answer?
That prompts me to ask you, Mataji, how do you counteract that? If he's getting these anxiety thoughts and things like that are coming to his mind, how would we counteract that?
Oh, I see. Well, repeating the mantra, thinking of putting your mind, if you are meditating on a form of God, then putting the mind there. This is the whole reason for meditation and doing japa, is to continually say, God. The mind wants to go back to the ego continually. This fear, this person did this, and this person said that. Our mind is continuously going on this. And the whole point of meditation is to deny this, to say, it's God, it's a self, it's Brahman, it is Durga, it is God. This is where I want my mind. And it takes practice. This is like Krishna says in the Gita. Arjuna asks, how can you control the mind? It can't be controlled. It's like the wind. And Krishna says, it's you practice. Abhyasa yoga, the yoga of practice. You can just keep practicing. And when you tell your mind this. You tell your mind that this, Swami Turiyananda used to say, when you sit down to practice, imagine that you're putting in a box and say, no disturbances from outside. Do not disturb. And you hang a sign there, outside there, and only think of the Lord. So this is the only way to do it, is to practice. But as Swami Brahmananda said, you practice and practice and practice for a long time, and you think nothing is happening. All the doors are closed. And you think, am I going to remain the same person? Is this going to go on and on and on? Suddenly, grace comes, and the door opens. That's if you're sincere in your practice, and you pray to the Lord, please, I want to meditate. This is what I do before I start. I tell, please help me keep my mind on you. So, this helps. It really does help. And when you are sincere, sometimes the door will open and the grace comes. But then Swami Brahmananda says, then this goes in phases. Okay, then doors will seem closed again for a while. And then suddenly the door will open. But the next time I know the door will open sometime. It's happened once, it can happen again. And the second time it happens, you get some hope, and still the mind goes back to thinking this and that. but your sincerity will bring the grace of the Lord. It will open the doors, you know.